Good evening and welcome to this, the last MG EVs community podcast of 20. The last MG EVs community podcast of 20. Community podcast of 20. Community podcast.
Not me.
Mine's muted.
Okay, will do.
Mine's muted.
Good evening and welcome to this, the last MG EV community podcast of 2023. The last MG. Still getting a bit of feedback. No, I don't actually have, I don't even have YouTube on. Still getting a bit of feedback. No, I don't actually have, I don't even have YouTube on.
Jennifer.
Still getting a bit. I don't even have YouTube on.
Jennifer.
Don't think so. I don't have it on either.
I've just closed YouTube, so it's not me.
Yeah, I've closed
Don't think
YouTube
so. I
too.
don't have it on either.
I've just closed YouTube, so it's not me.
Yeah, I've closed YouTube
No, I
too.
don't have it on either.
I've closed mine.
Just in case.
How's that?
Should we try again?
Okay. Here we go again, third time lucky. Good evening and welcome to this, the last MG EV community podcast of 2023, streaming live on Monday the 18th of December, although by the time we get this finished it'll probably be Tuesday the 19th, 2023. This evening we'll discuss MG EVs, hoping to inform and entertain you for about an hour or so. I'm Dave Stewart, Dave S in the forum, currently driving the new style ZS long range, and joining us all the way from Tasmania, Jennifer, how are you?
I'm great, Dave. How are you?
It's great to have you back on, and
Thank you.
we'll give you a bit of a solo spot at some stage later on, just to give us an update of how things are down under.
Sure.
Also joining us just outside Oslo, and it's a while since I've said that, John. Welcome back to John Griffiths.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me back on for today. Much appreciated. So, hope I can offer something.
Good seeing you.
Nice to see you, Dave.
And from Devon, Tom's here as well. Hello, Tom.
Hi, folks. I'm T-Sedge on the forum, driving an MG4. Good to see you. Happy Christmas, everybody.
And from Swindon, Vince is joining us once again.
Hi, yeah, Vince Williams, Vince31 on the forum. Currently driving the Mark II ZSEV. Had the Mark I ZSV before that.
Perfect. Good to see you again. And from the Charlie Group MG in England, the Innovation Development Manager, Miles Roberts. Miles, it's great to see you as ever.
Oh, good evening, everyone. Hi, Miles Roberts, CG on the forum. And yeah, good to have a bit of festive cheer, I hope.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm coming a bit over like the Christmas Grinch. I got the memo, but I didn't respond. I've got a Christmas tree kind of hat thing going on here, but I'm not
So
really.
you have to wear that. That's law. You have to wear that now.
No, it's just there. we can refer to it. If you're watching us live, thank you for joining us, and please click the like button and join us on the discussion in the chat window. If you're watching later, thank you for choosing to watch the video, and please subscribe and get notifications of when we go live the next time. So we're going to have quite a lot, try and cram quite a lot into a quite compact program tonight. We'll be discussing the MG4, the MG5 and the ZSEV, and we'll be looking at maybe one or two new things that are maybe in the far distant horizon. It's, as I said earlier, it's great that we've been joined again by Jennifer in Tasmania and John in Norway, and so we'll have a wee chat with them separately about how things are out in their neck of the woods. And I know John has been doing a wee bit of digging to see how sales with various models, etc., are going on, which we've always appreciated. So great, John. We'll get an update from you.
Okay.
So some of these things, as usual, we've trawled the forum. We're going to be looking at some of the delays in dealerships and having a look at that, and the iSmart app, and what sort of updates there are possibly coming for the software. Then we'll look at 1 or 2 MG4 issues, some MG5 issues, and MG ZS. And then, as I say, we'll have a chat with John and Jennifer. So, looking at the across all the cars, Miles, there seems to be a bit of a thing about there seems to be long delays, well over a month to get an appointment, no courtesy cars, etc. Are you seeing that, or what do you feel like it's like on the ground?
I mean, from our point of view, all I can obviously say is about our own dealerships and what our issues we face are. The problems we've got typically at the moment with service appointments is that we are incredibly busy, not in some ways kind of a victim of our own success, because MG dealerships obviously that started selling EVs when the first ZS EV came out, sort of 2019 to late 2018, start 2019. Those cars are now sort of 2, 3, 4 years old. They're well within the cycle of things, but obviously we hit a bit of a sort of weird time around COVID, where in 2020 a lot of servicing didn't happen on time, and a lot of it got delayed. MOTs got extended by 6 months and things like that. So what happened was that if your MOT was due in summer 2020, it got extended by 6 months automatically by the government, because basically no MOT stations were open. And that meant that there's an awful lot more MOTs happening this time of year than there would have been in a normal year had that cycle not been broken. Also, what we're seeing is that there's an awful lot of difficulty in both the recruitment and retention of good quality technicians. Garage technicians are increasingly asked to do more and more electrical type things rather than physical spanners on nuts type of stuff, and it's a different skill set, and it's one that obviously with our own staff we go through a training process throughout the year. We make sure that's carried out as best we can, but when we're trying to as we get more busy and we're trying to encourage to recruit from outside, it's getting people who have those skills already, or else we've got to put them through quite an intensive training procedure to actually get them up to the standards that's required by brands like MG, so that people are level 3 or level 4 qualified on electric drivetrains, for example, which if they've worked for a non-franchise dealership they might not have had that experience before. So that's making it quite difficult. And also the fact is that at this time of year there's also an increase in obviously courier firms being very busy and their own fleets needing a lot of maintenance, and so companies like, for example, Amazon might suddenly have a bit of a recruitment drive themselves to try and get extra staff in to cover all of the extra vans that they need to maintain on their fleet, and they might be willing to pay over the odds for those technicians, which means that then it might be an attractive place for our technicians to go find employment. So there's a number of reasons why it's costing us more to retain the ones that we have, and it's difficult to find good quality staff to replace the ones that do leave. So that can cause a bit of a problem. And also there's the age-old problem of nobody takes the holidays until December because they don't get a chance to earlier in the year because we were too busy earlier in the year. So it ends up that the week or two before Christmas, everyone's like, well, I've still got 2 weeks holiday to use, and so they end up booking half of December off, which then completely screws our timetables. So yeah, we're currently booking about 3 weeks in advance, which kind of takes you into January, obviously. But naturally, we're closed for a few days throughout the Christmas period anyway.
And I guess the courtesy car delay would be a similar thing. Dealerships get really busy; they run out of spare cars to give people.
Yeah, and I think the issue as well is that at this time of year we don't want to register any extra cars if we can avoid it, because we're coming up to a change of year. So if we were to register a car in December to put on an extra courtesy car, it's going to be a 2023 car, whereas, you know, if we register it in January, it's 2024. It helps with residual prices. So that is another reason why perhaps, you know, if we've sold a courtesy car, if we defleeted some cars towards the end of the year, we're not looking at replacing them until January for our own, well, for cash flow as much as anything else as well. You know, when you've got a business which is typically in a lull in December, not many people, you know, this might be different in other countries, but not many people in the UK buy cars as Christmas presents these days. So we tend to find that there is a natural lull in sort of November, December, which then means that you know, your cash flows down. So you wouldn't want to start registering extra cars and incur that extra cost at a time which is naturally quieter for you. So so yeah, in terms of, you know, why it's taking a month to get booked in with it, I think just, yeah, that combination of reasons really. And in terms of the courtesy cars, I can only say that, yeah, we're probably just holding out to avoid registering cars in the last week of December, unless there's a target to be hit with MG. You know, if MG say you need to have 200 registrations in December and we're on 190, we might start registering a few extra courtesy cars. But otherwise, if there's not a financial reason to do so, you'd probably avoid it if you could.
Yeah, I think in the last podcast I said I was a wee bit apprehensive. I was going to the local dealership for the first time, and yeah, I did. But I booked in the car for its service, so it was about a 4 or 5 weeks lead time. And but I must admit, I thought Fraser's Volker were great, but it's a fair drive. It's about 150, 160 miles away for me. So having one in Inverness now is great. I'm sort of thinking, well, at least it's going to be handy. But my God, they were on the ball. They never misled me in any way. You said your car will be ready. There's a couple of things I said I went and looked at. I said, right, could you get the car in earlier? So no, I came away a very happy bunny, and the it was about £4 cheaper than they had given me an estimate for. So I was cock a hoop miles. £4 well saved.
An extra £4. I mean, that's pretty much half a Christmas paid for, isn't it, Dave? So
I could buy my castle.
Yeah, it's a tough time for car dealers. You know, cash flow wise, it's a struggle. This year has been a struggle generally for car sales. I mean, I know that nobody's going to start, you know, crying over us, but it's the stock issues that we've had this year in terms of the devaluation of used vehicles has really affected a lot of dealerships. So, and the higher interest rates. So I don't know if this will be of interest to everyone, but I'll say anyway. So as car dealership group, we don't actually own every single vehicle. We put it on a funding line. We have a finance house that funds our vehicles. We've currently got around £15 million of stock, of used car stock. So that's why we don't own it all for cash. But we do pay, obviously, interest on that loan. And typically we're paying sort of, you know, obviously the bank base rate is 5.25% now. We're currently paying probably about 6.5% on the interest on the loan. So each car that's on our forecourt is costing us about £300 a month in interest. So if you've got a car that's in stock for 2 months, it's lost you £600 just in stocking fees, basically. So in terms of, you know, so for EVs, which have become a slower selling vehicle used, and part of that's because there's been some stronger finance offers for new cars, and part of it's because people haven't got the money to buy an EV, you know, whether it's used or whatever, and, you know, unless the car's cheap. So the only levers that dealerships have to pull available to them really for, you know, encouraging people to buy used cars is to make them cheaper. So we've seen some of our used car, you know, whereas last year some people were I don't know, buying an MG4 and they were having it 6 months and they were selling it for the same price as a new one. This year, typically, you know, you're buying, you know, if the new price is £32,000, a used one that's a year old might now be £25,000, and people think that's an awful lot of depreciation, and it is. But it's also, if you remember back before COVID, that's pretty much what you'd expect out of a new car when you bought it back then. Is that, you know, the cars do lose cash when you come off the forecourt.
25% in the first year, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, a typical sort of 3-year residual for any used car, petrol, diesel, whatever, has typically been around 45% after 3 years. That's sort of what it used to be. And they got to the point where some people were thinking that their cars were basically depreciation proof, that they were, and some people benefited from that. I know there's a number of people on the forum here who upgraded to, for example, Dave, you went to a ZS EV to a new ZS EV, partially because you offered fairly strong money for your existing car. And if you hadn't, or your car, rather than it, if it had been depreciated down significantly, you probably would have thought, oh, well, it's a bit of a jump, is that I don't really need the upgrade, you'd have thought about it more. Unfortunately, I say, car dealers, if a car's sat on your forecourt and it's not selling, you're going to have to drop the price. And it's getting to the point where obviously you'd then be, if somebody comes to part exchange a car in with you and says, look, I want to buy this new ZS EV. I've got a MG 5 standard range. I want to chop in against it. Well, if you've got two of those already on your forecourt, you're going to think, well, it's got to be cheap for me to, I don't want to obviously, bring it at the same cost as those and then have it sat on my forecourt for a couple of months. So prices seem to have gone down quite a bit. I think they have sort of plateaued a bit, but I think that it's been a really tough deal. I know that as we've written down over £1 million of stock just on EVs this year, which is an awful lot of money to take out of your bottom line. So it's been a real tough operating environment for a lot of car dealerships, and some groups have had significant issues. I see that Lookers are looking at cutting something like 600 jobs in the UK and closing several dealerships, and that will happen. I think across the board there will be a lot of gin palaces which have had very, very, very good profits up until recently, and now just really it's biting them hard.
But I suppose the huge growth of MG over the last 2 years, when I bought my first car, there were only 3 agencies in Scotland. Now there's a proliferation. So, there is a balancing out of what's the right level for sales versus.
Yeah, I think MG says that they think that around 150 dealers nationwide is saturation point. So there have been some dealerships which have closed of late, and some of those have been quite well loved family-owned brands around the UK. I've seen, there's quite a few. I've heard of friends that said that, they used to take their cars to one in Gloucester or whatever, and that's closed, and the next nearest one's now Bristol or something. It's but also part of that is it's not necessarily that they weren't performing with MG, it's that they were doing quite well with MG, but the bigger cost constraints of the industry have really come against them. And to be fair, if you own your premises, if you own a big dealership site outright, if you're not renting it, and you go, okay, well, I could continue to run a dealership, and I could, we could make £500,000 profit this year potentially, or I'm getting close to retirement, and Aldi have just offered to buy the site for X million pounds. Which is going to cause less stress, and which is the way to go. So I think there's been quite a bit of that.
Well, that in fact happened here recently with a well-known MG dealer who decided that rather than end up in a terrible situation next year, decided to close shop and sell to somebody else. But he didn't want to end up with massive debts and a great loss. But back to what you're talking about, the pricing and what you got sitting on your forecourt. That's what's happened with some of the big dealers here with the Marvel R, for example. They're selling it at a loss to get it off the books because they can't buy any more new cars until they've sold their existing. So you're talking about millions and millions of pounds of stock sitting on a dock waiting for a buyer to come through the room, through the door. So you're getting about £7,000, £6,500 off the Marvel R at the moment with subsidised interest. But I'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Yeah.
Well, shall we move on to the app, David?
Yeah, certainly. I was just going to say, on leaving that, remember that whilst we're seeing in the forum bad news stories, etc., there's still a lot of good dealerships out there, and I see a couple of folks saying they've had great service, as I did, from the dealership. So let's not paint too gloomy a picture of it, I suppose. Yeah, the iSmart app, a bit of disgruntlement about that. Miles, have you got anything on this?
So I had no prior knowledge that the app was being updated today. So when it got updated, and I've actually been on a day off today, so I've managed to completely forget about that when I was saying that I could do the podcast today. So I've been out Christmas shopping with my wife, been to Harrogate, done a whole lot of shopping, and then reading my dad's. So I haven't actually had a chance to even do anything other than look at the forum and see that a few people have had issues with that. So Tom, Vince, I believe you've actually got the new app. Probably best if you talk on this subject.
Yeah. Well, I haven't managed to get it to work yet, although others have. There seems to be a few problems. One, as I understand, if you have an Android phone, you may need to uninstall and then reinstall the app for it to work. The other has been server problems where you can't log in, or it logs you out after an hour or so. But what I have heard is it finally gets the heated seats the right way round on the MG4, which is great because previously drivers. You press driver's seat and you got your passenger seat warmed up, and vice versa. So I have heard that, but I haven't been able to use it. And a lot of people have been trying to get in and posting on the forum today to say they're having problems.
Certainly, I loaded it on earlier, and when it came up updated, it went straight to. I'm on Android, by the way. It came up, and as soon as it came up, it would cut out straight away and reboot and come on again, reboot. But I fixed that by it said clear the cache, clear all the data, and since then it's worked okay. I've just checked it just now, and it's just connected to the car okay. I can unlock the car and do the usual stuff. The only bit that doesn't work is the when you save it for miles, it goes back to kilometers the next time you log in again. But that's very minor compared to what I've heard. But mine seems to be working okay on Android at the minute.
What versions of MG is it available on?
So the iSmart app is only available on the facelifted MG5, the facelifted ZS EV, and the MG4. It's not available on the HS5. It's not available on the pre-facelift version of the MG ZS EV or the MG5. They just don't have the communication capability within the car. They don't have the comms ECU. One thing I've just seen, because I've seen on the forum quite a lot of people, and I've seen a couple of emails coming to me today as well. People saying they need to unbind to rebind the car, or when they've logged into the app, it's asking them to rebind straight away. Don't try and rebind. Basically, what I think's happening is that when you go to log into the app, there's a choice of logging with email address or logging with your phone number, and quite typically, people will create an account first using either their email address or their phone number. Now, whichever you use the first time you ever signed in, that's your username. So your username is either your email address or your phone number, and that's the thing that the car's bound to. Now, a lot of people have gone, okay, I can't, it's not logging in on email. I'll try logging in my phone. Actually, end up creating a second account with their phone number, which then obviously isn't bound to the car, because it's the email address that's bound to the car, or vice versa, whichever one they did first. And then they try and bind in again, and it says it won't bind. They end up having to get the car unbound to be able to rebind the car. Don't hit me with loads of requests for unbinding your car at the moment, because I think what's happening is that people are just mixing up their usernames effectively. They've used the email instead of the phone, or vice versa. If anyone is having a lot of issues, I can get the car unbound. However, bear in mind that I'm reliant on my friendly engineer at Longbridge doing that, and we're coming up to Christmas, so there may be some days off here or there that I can't get it done. So, yeah, effectively, if anyone's having lots of problems beyond a couple of days, then perhaps contact me. Drop me an email at miles.roberts@chorleygroup.co.uk. I'll need a copy of I'll need the VIN number. I'll need a copy of the ownership document, so the V5C, or a copy of the order form showing the VIN number on there to prove ownership, and then I can get the car unbound. But if at the moment, I think a lot of it's just server issue. I think the server's overloaded, to be fair. I think because every single MG owner across the world is currently trying to use the new version of the app. I just think the server capacity isn't quite there. So bear with. But if it's still not working in 48 hours, drop me an email.
We've got the same problem here. I've just checked the Facebook MG ZS group. Some people are saying install it and uninstall it twice on Android and it will work. But the same thing is also talking about the logging with your code. If there's any consolation, I lost contact with the Audi app for 4 weeks.
Well, my wife lost contact with the Volvo app a year ago, and it's still not resolved. So just
Okay.
FYI, it's not just MG.
But I think the problem that you alluded to is correct. There's too many people hitting the server, and the server has a problem. I got accused of logging in too many times, and every time you got an error message, even though I got an error message, it is actually said you'd logged in.
Yeah.
So you've got 20 error messages in a day, and there's a maximum number of hits with the Audi that you can go in and
I think it's like a denial of service, attack, don't they? So
yeah. So but I can't understand why they don't give it to selected users to try and do a beta test of it rather than launching it on an unsuspecting public in this manner with thousands.
I imagine they will have done some sort of testing, but obviously not with the volume of users at once. It's probably, like I say, I think it's the server volume that's just struggling at the moment. But give it a day or two to ignite, I think it'll be okay.
And there's also been some talk about any infotainment software upgrades coming in the near future, Miles.
I have no prior knowledge. There probably will be, but I haven't got any version numbers or anything like that, so I can't help. I'm sorry.
Well, just rest in the comfort that every day when I get in my car and the radio goes on, I go, why does the radio come on? It's just, but you've heard it before, so. Good. So maybe now just look at the individual versions. MG4, the X-Power has got the steering vibration or alleged steering vibration issue.
I think it's actually, I don't think it's the steering. I think it's the vibration seems to come from the rear, according to most reports. And it's, I think people thought there was a potential issue with steering dampening because there was an article that came out online that said that in Australian market, they were fitting a different steering damper to try and improve the drive of the car. And so people thought that might be related to this vibration that they mentioned. But
I think they feel it through the steering wheel, so that's why they think it's steering related.
I don't know what's causing the vibration. I don't know what's doing it. There's been nothing official from MG yet in the UK, so no updates at the moment. But I know that every report that's being given is being looked at. So if it becomes some sort of trend, then one of the things is it wasn't mentioned at all in any of the press cars. You'd think, if Auto Express or Autocar or whatever had have found something like that, they would have taken it at that sort of speed. They would have noticed a vibration. So I think the fact that it wasn't mentioned there means potentially it's a batch thing, but we'll see. We'll see what's come through.
Yeah.
And there's an AC charging problem, Tom. You?
So I've got this, but quite a few people are now reporting. I think we've had about 10 or 12. So basically, it stops charging early. So it'll work for months fine, whatever you limit you set up, 80% or 100%, or if you're on a standard range car, it will go to the full 100%. And then it just stops charging fully. Sometimes does 5%, 10%, 1%, 2%. I noticed it over a few nights it decayed, and now I can plug in any AC charger or a granny charger or go to a friend's house, and it'll only do 1 or 2%, and it cuts out. There's no errors. The car just says that it's full, and the charger says the charge terminated normally. DC charging is fine, fortunately. So, but obviously it's more expensive. But I can go out and top up.
Tom, so
what I have seen is a few people have reported being asked to take software updates, and also a few people have had the charge control unit replaced. That's all I know from what people have said on the forum.
All I'll say is if you've got that issue, you kind of need to take it to the dealership because obviously it's stopping you.
Yeah, my challenge with that is the first appointment is I think 17th of January, which is also a holiday time for me. So I'm not going to be able to get it looked at probably till February. But but yeah, it seems to have suddenly started happening. This might again be a batch of people. It seems to be phase 1 cars with the 11 kilowatt charger, which is the trophy in phase 1 in the UK. It doesn't seem to affect anyone in the Australia, New Zealand yet. With phase 2 cars.
We've not had any reported to our dealership, to my knowledge. So I think it is still fairly isolated numbers. It must be, because we do quite a lot. We haven't had any reported. But if anyone's having issues like that, obviously it needs taken to dealership. They need to open a service now case with MG. And it might be that they try software updates first, but can I ask you, Tom, so irrelevant of what limit you've now set. So if you set a limit of 100%, it still quits after a couple of percent.
Yep. Yeah, you can have anything. I'll leave it on 100% now, and it'll do 1 or 2%. I've put it on the granny last night, and it lasted 5 minutes and it stopped, and it was on about 70%. I've tried it on low charge when it's had 20%. I've tried it high charge, and on DC it will just charge all the way up. I can go well into the 90s, stop whenever I like. There's no problem. So I don't know why, but that's what it's doing.
I'm none the wiser on that. I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah, that's all right. I mean, for those who might have this, there's a good long forum thread on it. If you look for it, it should be near the top. So at least you can see what other people are experiencing.
Could I ask a question about the four-wheel drive? One of the problems I had with the Marvel R was that we have a cottage in the mountains, and it's quite icy in the winter. And of course, the four-wheel drive on the Marvel R doesn't cut in when you reverse. So do you know if that's the same with the X-Power?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure. So the X-Power, I've only had limited ability with it. I've driven it about 200 miles, and most of it was around a track, to be honest.
It'd be interesting to find out. Yeah, because you go into reverse and it just goes into front-wheel drive.
I know that when you put it in eco, it only goes in rear-wheel drive, unless you absolutely floor it, and then it'll bring in both motors.
One of those two, I can't remember. You don't get the full four-wheel drive. The idea behind it was they said it was performance. So there's quite a lot of people bought the Marvel R and realised they can't back up a hill in the winter. But okay.
Yeah, I haven't tried that. I've got a colleague who's got the MG4, so I'll ask him to check that.
Okay.
And there were one or two other things about the MG4 rear discs corroding. Was that
on the MG4? Was that?
Yeah. Yes. So it's one of the other things. So some people it seems to be the people who leave it on the default level 3 regen. Some of them have gone to their first service and been told your rear discs need replacing because they're too corroded. Well, essentially what happens is they're not used enough, and so they become corroded. And if the corrosion is left, it can become sufficiently corroded that the disc no longer makes good contact with the brake pad, and you have to have it replaced. It's not a lot of people, but it has been reported. I mean, various advice people have been giving, like make sure you do some hard braking every now and then, obviously making sure it's nobody behind you from a high speed. And personally, I keep mine on adaptive, so it doesn't seem I have a much less regen braking, particularly at speed. Which
I think that it's an issue we've had with EVs since the original Leaf came out. Again, the regen braking does quite a lot of braking force, and particularly with the rear wheels. The rear wheels do less braking force generally. Typically, normal petrol car is only doing sort of 20% of the braking effort. So I would find that, unless you're doing some harsh braking every now and again, which I tend to do because I live in a hilly area, so I tend to, and I drive spiritedly. I do tend to find that, you if you use your brakes, it's fine. But if you're just tootling around town all day, basically the brakes aren't getting cleaned by the pads. So just do some, either turn your regen off and do some more abrupt braking, or lend your car to me for the day and I'll sort your brakes out.
the ID3 has drum brakes, on the back.
It does, yes, it does.
The Cooper as well.
There's a good argument for that.
We took the MG back because it had a Mazda CX-3, and that went through 2 sets of discs. Wife doesn't drive a lot, so before we took the ZS back, I went up and down the motorway like an idiot, braking as if I was about to be ejected through the front windscreen. We took it up there, and the guy said, "No, it's fine." So I would recommend a really, really hard session of braking to get the rust off. Yeah. And,
can I recommend to everybody, don't give Miles your car today? There is a health warning.
Particularly if it's an X-Power, make sure
so you'd like to have that one to test. Just before we move off the MG4, Miles, there's a question on the forum, on the YouTube chat. Sorry, are there any information yet on a facelift version?
There's been rumours in a couple of trade magazines saying that the MG4 is due a facelift at the end of 2024, start 25. I have no information at the moment. However, I'm going to an MG conference in January, so I might have some information after January.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Thank you.
Good. Now, there's a couple of issues that we can look at for both the MG5 and the ZS. And the Tesla supercharging problem seems to be reported by owners of both. I, by sheer cussedness, do not use a Tesla supercharger ever. So I'll have to hand over to other people here. Is it still the problem? It's just not recognizing, or?
So I think that I've been told that if it's on the latest version of the BMS CC,
I've got them here, Miles. It's the VCU,
yeah,
CCU,
yeah,
the EVCC, the BMS, and the BCM. That's from Jake.
yeah. So that's what basically I told Jake. Jake got those updates onto his car, and his works fine. So basically those five ECU codes. EVCC is EV charge controller. What was the other one? Sorry, CCU charge controller.
CCU, VCU, BCM, and BMS.
Yeah, so basically battery control module, battery
Management system.
Yeah, they're all basically to do with BMS and charging a battery. If all those are updated, there shouldn't be any issues with using the Tesla chargers that are open and locked.
I understand it doesn't. You can't do it on the first generation ZS.
I've not tried on the first generation ZS.
But that's what I've heard.
But again, if
Not
you had all those updates and it's still not working on that, then presumably not. But
and is that also true of first generation MG5, or is it?
so I've got a friend who's got James Coates, from James and Kate, who does the Cleveland EV mobile servicing. He's got MG and he uses Tesla chargers. So I can only assume that the MG5s, both gens, are working. But these are all long range. I don't know if the standard range is any different, but the long range versions work certainly.
Our special correspondent Les is not available tonight, so he was given posted on the supercharger. But I may try one out I'll take one for the team and I'll try out a Tesla supercharger. I just actually stumbled across a bank of about 4 of them in Inverness the other day. When did they turn up?
Well, Dave, sometimes Tesla do
going to the other people. That's the advantage of the Tesla superchargers, if you can get to one. So a lot cheaper, especially you can pay a fee.
They are cheaper.
A month,
off peak they can be like less than 50 pence per kilowatt and things, can't they? So,
it is only certain Tesla superchargers that are open to all vehicles. So you do check that your local one is
open. All of them
open to non-Teslas.
Also, some MG5, Tom, you were picking up on this one, reduced power at low states of charge, but that's quite a standard thing, isn't it? Or is it just happening too early? Yeah,
the issue that was being mentioned on the MG5 forums was that a few people were seeing this at 20 to 25% state of charge, which seemed high to be getting, rather than sort of 5% or less than 10% or whatever normal.
What I would say is that this is more common on LFP batteries. Because of the low voltage movement that they have on LFP compared to lithium ion, sometimes the BMS finds it difficult to actually calculate effectively the power output of the cell, and so we can have it, particularly if it's not had a balanced charge for a while. Sometimes it can be that one cell seems slightly low voltage, and so to protect itself, it reduces the power output. So if it's on an LFP type, if it's on LFP as in the standard range batteries, the 51s, I can understand that perhaps more. If it's on the lithium ion batteries, the long range ones, I'd suggest that perhaps it could do the bounce charge. If everyone's doing exactly that, then again, take it to your dealership and see if they can do an update. But I would say that if it's particularly cold weather, that can also affect the power output of the batteries, and sometimes that can limit your power.
Yeah, that makes sense, because we've heard that on the MG4 X power as well, which obviously can draw a huge amount of power. Some people have said if the battery's cold, it doesn't give its full whack always.
Yeah, which is like with the Tesla Plaid and things, when they to do the launches, there's actually a battery heating mode on that specifically heat the batteries to the right temperature before you do the launch. So I can understand that the battery temperature would be a factor in that case. I'm gonna have to open a new beer soon. This one's almost finished.
Charge up your battery. I could just hear Miles tutting up about. I have on a couple of occasions been really low by the time I got back home, and well under 10%. That's all I'm going to say, because Miles will cut to the level that it doesn't even tell you how many miles you've got left. That's how bad. what a heavy, horrible car it is to drive when it just is reducing all the power going out to everything. Oh, it's like, oh, it's terrible.
Yeah, I found myself driving the Aura Funky Cat yesterday, and I got back home with about 5% charging, and that was, you know, limiting my acceleration and things. So rather than normal power outputs up to 120 kilowatts in the Funky Cat, and I think it was limiting me to about 60. So basically, instead of 150 horsepower, I'm getting about sort of 75. So it's yeah, it can make quite a difference, particularly when you're on a 70-mile-an-hour road, you know, by a dual carriageway, you know, and you put your foot down to overtake and realize actually no, that's not happening, is it?
Yes, it's highly unadvisable.
The car's going, do you want to find a charge point? I'm like, no, I'm fine, I'm fine. And it's going, do you want to find a charge point? No, I'm fine. I'm just a few miles away. Well, in that case, you shall suffer my wrath.
That's right. And it's a good bit downhill, the last bit. Yes, but you've got to get over the last hill before you. Oh dear. And I see some chassis rusts being reported, especially in the older first style of the ZS.
On the original ZSEV?
Yeah.
Yeah, just people after 3 years or so just worrying because they're getting reports of rust, surface rust. Is it normal? Should they do anything?
And what I would point out is that there is a 7-year anti-perforation warranty on the vehicle. So if the customer gets the car serviced with MG dealership, gets the corrosion inspected every year, in the event that slight surface browning becomes more endemic, it's covered by the warranty and it would be fixed within the warranty, whatever that would entail, whether it would be a localized repair, whether it would be a replacement. So for those people who feel that they have that issue, bring it with your dealer and make sure it's noted on your file.
But we've come a long way in the 3 years, haven't we, Miles? It used to be just the MG ZS, all you heard was the bongs. How'd you stop the bongs? The bongs. No, I don't.
Yeah, well, if you go to the Amsterdam dealers, they still have the bongs.
You go to what?
So if you go to the Amsterdam dealers, they still have the bongs.
yeah, got you. Yeah, but slow in the uptake. And this is one and sticky door handles. The handle being stuck out. Again, I haven't seen any hiding or hair of that, but yeah, silicon spray
by your dealer. We've seen it on other brands. On various cars. I know Tesla had an issue with it as well at one point with the door handle sticking out. Getting lubricated. What can sometimes affect it, particularly if you take your car to a local jet wash, is sometimes when they power wash the car, you're driving basically, you know, a jet of water in through all the crevices. It's going to blast away any grease that's there, and that can cause issues. So yeah,
I'd recommend a silicon spray, not WD-40, because WD-40 will attract dust and dry out, and while it will work, it won't do it any good in the long run.
Yeah, it's not a lubricant; it's a water displacement, really, isn't it? So
yes.
Yeah, silicon spray is what we would use in our dealership.
That's its name, the 40th attempt at getting a successful water dispersant.
Yeah.
Great pub story, that one. So, but Tom, I know you spent a bit of time going through looking at all the threads, so thank you very much for that, bringing that to everybody's attention. And it's interesting how you can just see how some things that you're maybe not experiencing yourself, other folk are, and vice versa. So thanks for pulling all that together. So now the bit that I've been really looking forward to, as I said right at the start, we've got Jennifer and John with us. It'd be really good. I know, sorry if I put you on the spot, guys, but if you could just give us a quick sort of, I don't know, 4 or 5 minute update of where you are, what you're going to do next, why, and how things are out there. So being a gentleman, I will of course ask Jennifer to contribute first. Jennifer, how are things down there?
No, they're good. Just,
summer for a start.
Yep. Doesn't feel like summer today, but no, we're looking forward to that. So we had the first generation MG ZS. We had it for 2 years, and So late last year, we were getting a bit anxious. We were traveling a bit more around the Tasmania and also up to the mainland, and just the range issue. There were more people on not so many chargers. I mean, you guys have been through all the lack of charging stations, the last few years. It's becoming a real issue here. I think this year Australia's taken on an extra 80,000 EVs, which doesn't sound much to you, but for not a great charging infrastructure, it was a bit of a strain last summer holidays. So it's going to be interesting in the next couple of months to see how things have changed over the last 12 months. So for us, it was not enough charging stations where we wanted to go, and then there were more people on them. So at that stage, the long range MGs weren't being offered in Australia, and so we put our name down for the BYD Atto 3 in, I think, November last year. We waited until March, and they delivered, I don't know, quite a few thousand of them. So we got one and very happy with it. A few little things about the MG we miss. The sunglasses holder, that was one of the up in the thing that was Andrew's going, I really missed that. Anyway, that was a little thing. I missed the little passenger door button. If I have a key, I can get in the passenger door. They don't have that on the BYD. The regen braking isn't quite as strong on the BYD. It's a very different ride to the MG. It's a bit more, I won't say luxurious, but a bit more comfortable. I'll put it that way. So, but the MG, I really enjoyed driving. I just found it a very fun car to drive. So I mean that the BYD doesn't have that sporty sort of ride. But that said, it's a great car. Resale, as far as resale go, we didn't trade it in at the BYD dealership. The whole BYD dealership thing is very interesting. Hearing what Miles was saying about cars on the forecourt, it's almost like you buy the car online and you go out to a dealership, which is it's not really branded, and you have a test drive, and that's about as much as you have to do with the dealership. The servicing's outsourced to other, I don't know what you call them. I think we went to a Kmart place, and they had that's where their authorized dealership servicing is. So it's a very different sort of infrastructure. I don't know, when Miles was talking about closure of branded dealerships, you wonder whether that's going to be the next sort of movement, retail of cars, where people just buy them online, and it's like picking up a television set. So anyway, it was an interesting experience. I must say, the dealership, we only have one MG dealership in Hobart, and so you're a little bit caught. You can't go anywhere else, and our experience was so with them. So I don't miss that. Anyway, so that's the things we missed about the MG. We don't miss the smaller range, the shorter range, and the glitchy software. I think I got to the end of my tether with that when it was what you call a bank holiday weekend, and we were going across to the island just near us on the car ferry, and I had a friend from Germany staying with me, and we got on the ferry, had the windows down because it was summer, and she said, oh, let's get out and go and have a look. So I quickly turned the car back on to shut the windows, and then the whole thing just froze. The whole interface froze. So I spent the rest of the ferry trip 20 minutes trying to get this car to do something, because it was basically stuck on, but it wouldn't do anything. And so we got to the other side, and they had to push the car to the side of the ferry and take the ferry out, bring another ferry in, so all the huge queues of traffic could keep moving. And I just said, I can't, this is it. That just did it for me. Because then we had to go back to the other side, call the AA, the MG service people, and it was like a holiday weekend, and I was just like, nah, that's it. So that was when we okay, we're going to go try the BYD. So we're very happy with the BYD. We got a good price for the MG. I was very happy with the resale value. I think we lost, I don't know, 15%. We sold it privately. So that was good, and went to a lady who just up the road, and she really loves it. It's perfect for her. So that's my story. It doesn't mean we won't go back to MG. I've seen a couple of MG4s in the last couple of weeks driving around. I think I did some research, and they've just, I think last month they outsold the Tesla 3 in Australia. So that's a pretty good,
Wow.
yeah, doing pretty well. But that said, the BYD seems to be really pushing MG here. They've got, I think, the Dolphin models come out here, and that's very popular. And I just read that BYD, I think they're hitting a sales target of 3 million cars for this year, which is pretty incredible. Not in Australia, but coming out of China. So it's just incredible figures, coming out of the Chinese market. But for all my reservations about the MG ZS, I still think the whole MG badging thing is a brilliant thing, and I think that's a great thing for the UK that was brought back, and that MG have come that far with it. And all you guys, I know there's all these little things on the forums about what's wrong, but then there's all the great stories that people don't have problems, and I think it's just a brilliant brand that has been the revival in that brand. I think it's something that they should be very proud of. So
Oh well,
yeah.
So you'll not become a stranger, so you'll still.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm happy to try MG again. When we're talking about the 4-wheel drive, John, that's something we're probably interested in here, because we have problems. The tires on the BYD are just terrible, so we have to get them replaced. But yeah, 4-wheel drive, something I'd be interested to try in an SUV size, because I think we need that down here. But yeah, you never know. We'll keep looking.
Still as enthusiastic about just energy conservation as you were? You're having your house
Yeah,
scanned?
yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's always a battle here. Like, we're talking to a neighbour the other day. He thinks that EVs are a fad. He's waiting for hydrogen, and I'm thinking, you're going to be waiting a very long time, particularly down here, like the end of the earth, to get infrastructure to hydrogen cars and trucks and things. But I mean, the Chinese car market for Australia is particularly important, because our major export is iron ore, so much, and nearly all of that goes to China. So all the iron ore used to be used for the steel for the building industry, which has had a tumble in China, but it nearly all goes to cars now. So for us, it's a sort of a circular economy. And I think the iron ore industry here is trying to abate CO2 emissions. I think our biggest miner, they've started to move to electrical equipment, mining equipment, and also building their own solar and generation on site at the big mines. We're talking 2.5 million tons of CO2 they're emitting per year. So I think when if Australia ever starts to not fine, but put a more of a tax or a impediment to sending all these heavy emitting exports overseas. It's all very well saying, oh, we've brought our emissions down, but when you're sending all this stuff overseas to emit somewhere else, it's not, it's getting a bit, people are getting a bit, it doesn't sound quite right. So it's good that the mining industry is trying to get on board with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's quite difficult for a nation that's so heavily mineral dependent on your economy. It's
Exactly.
throwing the baby out with the
Tricky.
bathwater a bit, isn't it? Going.
Yeah,
And
it's
sad that there's no car production any longer in Australia, is there? Holden, was it Holden went?
Yeah, Holden, yeah, GM.
Last
That's
2 years
all
ago, was
closed.
it? 3 years. I can't remember that. So
Yeah.
instead of buying used cars from Japan, wasn't there something about a 1-year-old Japanese car was considered a new car in Australia because of the tariffs?
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're still importing. There is a couple of companies here that are importing used EVs from Japan. But I think because of all we're talking about used car sales here, the last 2 years, used EVs have starting to flood the market. So I don't know how they're going to go with importing used cars, but yeah, it's an interesting market as far as that goes. Yeah, we don't have the very strict rules, I think, that you guys have about roadworthiness and age of cars, which is probably why our industry folded. People hang on to cars here for 20 years, 25 years, which is not great sometimes. Yeah.
Oh, well, as I say, don't become a stranger. And when you see Stuart's email appearing the next time, please.
Definitely.
Great seeing you again and great hearing from you. So
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
it was good. It was good. Now, our other foreign correspondent is our good pal John, who lives just outside Oslo.
Yes. You'll see
wish
just
Jennifer
outside
said she was from
Oslo if you come in the summer, as you're talking about, then I'll show you how just outside Oslo.
So, how are things in Norway?
I'm looking at the picture that Jennifer has and feeling extremely, we had minus 17 degrees 2 weeks ago for about a week and a half. So, and I've got two very good friends. One's Australian, married to a Norwegian, and the New Zealander married to a Norwegian. And they both disappeared a week last Wednesday. One's gone for 4 months back to New Zealand. The other's gone for 6 weeks to Melbourne. And keep getting these pictures on WhatsApp with shorts and sunshine and cold beers. So, definitely jealous to a point. No, I think best way to start is like Jennifer, our car, or my wife's MG ZS, the first version, first release, came up for renewal, or was coming up for renewal for leasing. Had to be returned. And what do? I wouldn't have minded a Mark II version, but what we've had here is a flood of offers with things like 1% interest fixed for 3 years. So we ended up going for, because my wife didn't really want to have a car, and I'm not going to be a taxi driver for the rest of my years on this planet. I said, no, we're going to get you a car and we'll see what happens in 3 years. And the best deal we found was a Citroen EC4. It just couldn't compete price-wise with the MG ZS. And as we talked about in the introduction before we went live today, there's a lot of people, just like my wife, we don't need 450 kilometers or 250 miles of range. And what we found was that there were very few cars of the sort of lower range. A bit more than the ZS was fine, but why do you pay so much extra for a battery that you're never going to use? And unlike the UK, they're not selling the standard range MG ZS. And as I said, the MG4 was too much of a go-kart for my wife. She wanted to sit a bit higher. So at the end of the day, it came down to money. And the idea of buying a Citroen was something for me, a French car. But I'm actually being really impressed. It's like an MG ZS. It's not a pure ICE. It's an ICE car with a battery in it, built in Spain. But it's good. Heated steering wheel, things like that included for free and included in it. So overall, it sits a bit higher. But the one thing I would say is it's got an incredible ride. Miles has done a video of it. So interesting to compare because the MG ZS did everything it said on the can. There was no, it wasn't pretentious. It was a car, and it didn't cost a lot of money. I think the regret that we have was we should have bought it rather than lease it, because I was very concerned about depreciation. And had we bought it, we would have sold it. We would have lost more than Jennifer had lost, but certainly we would have got quite a lot of money back had we paid it off at the same rate. So now it's me with my Audi and my wife with her Citroën. And as long as she can get 2 grandchildren in the back, and at least it's got a light in the back seat. That was one of the biggest disappointments when we looked at the facelifted version of the ZS. There's still no light in the back seat, you know. And if you've ever tried fastening a 12-month-old into a baby seat in the middle of the night and -10 outside and your fingers are frozen, you can't see what you're doing, then I can certainly recommend a light in the back seat.
And when you switch on the car, is the radio on or off, John?
Sorry?
When you switch on the car, is the radio on or off?
No, the radio doesn't come on, but it's got wireless Android and Apple CarPlay, and starts up immediately, which was a real surprise. I think I was lucky I got one with a new infotainment system that it had. But no, I don't want to knock MG. It was a really nice car. As I say, it did everything on the box, and it was good to drive. Plenty of space in it. It was a bit like a TARDIS in the back when you started to load it up. But at the end of the day, it came down to dollars and cents or pennies and pounds, and Citroën not doing very well here, and basically not £5,000 off the car, and we've got a fixed price for 3 years, which in this day and age, when you're paying 6-7% interest on a car loan, new 99% was just too good to be true. And then, as luck has it, or didn't have it, 5 weeks or 6 weeks later, MG reduced the price of the MG ZS by 50,000. So we probably could have got a facelifted ZS EV, a little bit more expensive, but at the end of the day, a car's a car. And but I will say one thing: it's certainly nowhere near as efficient in the winter as the MG, even though the Citroën has a heat pump. We're losing, for just town driving, we're probably losing about 40% of the range in the winter.
Wow.
On the box, it does what it says. And one thing for people might know, it's a bit like the MG, but the MG seems to take into consideration temperature in the winter and reduces the range, whereas the Citroën charges up to 100% and it gives its full WLTP range, which to some people can be misleading, but you don't get this, why have I only got so many kilometers of range or miles. But anyway, but there we are. As I said when we chatted earlier, if MG do come out with a larger SUV 4-wheel drive next year, which is what they're hinting at here, bigger than the Marvel R, and it will reverse up a hill in 4-wheel drive, I could very well see myself going into that. I don't need something as expensive as an Audi 55. I can live with something a bit cheaper, as long as I got out of the taxing business with my wife. But yeah.
And
sorry?
I know you've done a bit of work in sales.
Yeah.
Is it still holding up?
Yeah, MG are doing reasonably well considering the way the market is, as probably as everybody aware. When Tesla slashed its prices 12 months ago, it threw the market into complete chaos over here, just completely blew everybody away. And as an example, Tesla sold 21,000 Model Ys in Norway since up until including November, and they've got 21% of the market share of the market with one model. 21%. And that's not counting the Model 3. So if you take the Model 3 and a few that sold of the Plaid and the S, so just flying off the shelves. And much of it is a bit like Jennifer was alluding to. You can go online, you buy it. We don't like the car. After 14 days, up to 14 days, you can give it back. and get your money back. Because in Norway, if you buy anything online, you are entitled, you've got 14 days period where you can give whatever it, get your money back. No questions asked.
Brilliant.
So BYD is not sold through, there's got an importer who imported a lot of cars, a big company called RSA. So they do their own servicing, and but the smaller brands like Xpeng, and they done the same sort of deal that Jennifer's talking about. They're using a third party set of people who do MOT testing and servicing of cars. So that's becoming more and more popular. I don't know what you pay for service for a ZS, but here it's between £450 to £550. But if you went to one of these third-party places, they'll do it for half the price, and you still retain your warranty.
Yeah.
So, but this agent business where Xpeng did and selling, they're trying to do it with Volvo, and Volvo will go online. But there's a lot of pushback. People are still resistant to doing it like that. Polestar, for example, you buy online. You've got a couple of showrooms. Neo doesn't have an agent model, but they haven't sold very many cars. They only sold 450 cars in Norway, or 500 cars this year, and it must be a huge loss for them. But and again, they've also gone heavily into discounts. So at the moment, until 18 months ago, you couldn't get a discount on a car because there was so much a waiting time for them. But now Neo's trying to sell off their old version of their big SUV, and they're knocking over £10,000 off it at the moment. So while they get rid of stock. So for anybody who wants to buy a car here at the moment, it's $299, nearly 3% fixed for 3 years on any MG, most of the MG range. But MG's sales have held up because of the MG4. And if I compare the numbers, they're down 7, nearly 8% compared to between 22 and 23. But the bestseller now is the MG4. It's turned. Last year it was the Marvel R with like 1,600 cars up to the end of November. And the MG4 is now 1,500, and the Marvel R has gone down to 510. So the MG4 has been a real hit here for MG.
Everywhere it has been, yeah.
But I think the biggest advantage of MG is the selection of cars that they have. So they're not just dependent on 2 or 3 models; they've got 4. So and they fit different. Although I don't think the estate car is particularly popular here. Certainly, the ZS is still holding up well, and the MG4. And they also sell what I hadn't seen in they call it a long range, extended range MG4 with a 75 kilowatt battery. But when I looked today on the MG site in the UK, I didn't see that. I just saw the one with the 64 kilowatt.
So the extended range is sold here. It's the 70. Well, it's 77 total. It's 75 usable.
Yeah, 75. Okay.
Same retail price as the X-Power. So it's 36,495 here in the UK.
Okay. You see here again, if you compare the prices, because you've got VAT on all of it, we've only got VAT on cars over about £40,000 at the moment in Norway. So if I give you an example, an X-Power costs £29,000 here in Norway. It's 36,500 in the UK before you start haggling. Yeah, the long range ZS is 25,500 in Norway, 35,000 in the UK. So the fact that you're paying 20% VAT on everything is still this huge saving that you're getting here. So and the MG4 Luxury with the gross 64 kilowatt, that's 25,000 in Norway, 32,000 in the UK. So the VAT makes a huge difference here. So so not surprising that they are doing so well. A good example is Hyundai and Kia. They're down 45, nearly 50% in sales compared to last year. and BMW, Audi, all the big boys. So last November, there wasn't a car in the top 10 of sales from any of the premium manufacturers. BMW, Audi, it was all the smaller, more affordable cars, and of course Tesla sitting on top of the pile. So really incredible numbers here. So I think we're up at 80%, over 80% now per month of EV sales compared to everything else. And then that will increase next year because they're going to tax hybrid cars even more compared to what they are now. So the push is more and more towards the to getting people into the electric cars. But infrastructure is a lot better, of course. That's the biggest advantage that we have over everybody else.
Okay, and John, same sentiment as we sent out to Jennifer. Please don't become a stranger. We're always fascinated to get your updates from how things are selling and different takes on your completely different market there. So similar to you, when you see Stuart's email, please.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to pop in now and again. If
that would be great. Well, we're going to have to start winding up now, guys. I think reflecting back on 2023, I changed car to the long range and I'm delighted with it. As Jennifer said, there are one or two things that just rip my knitting with the car. But all in all, generally pretty quite happy. Tom, sorry, dump this on you. How are you? Are you quite happy with your setup?
Yeah, well, it's my first EV, and I'd never go back to ICE. No, could never go back.
Yeah.
And I'm really, I mean, yeah, we've had a few teething problems, but I'm really happy with the car. It drives really well. So yeah, very, very happy. Looking forward to next year.
Yeah. And Vince, how's things in your world?
Yeah, very interesting. I love my ZS EV. Again, I got the long range. Having the long range, I had the short range before, like you, Jennifer. Moved to the long range. I think Miles was talking about it before with the COVID. We got a really good price when we traded ours in to get the long range. So, but that means now I only have to rapid charge 3 or 4 times a year. The rest of the time I'm doing it on the drive at a stupidly low price. So I'm more than happy with my ZS. Went to Wales and back, which is 200 miles each way. And although on the range this time of year in the winter, the gasometer on the range shows the WTLP is 278 miles, I think, and it's showing about 200 miles on long range on the gasometer. Well, I know through experience, when you're doing a long drive, you're going to get a much better range than that. So, and I did, I got 240 miles out of the range. So for midwinter, that's pretty good as far as I'm concerned.
Really good efficiency, is that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy with it. So I'm dead happy with it. Yeah, and for me, I'm not going to move to anything else. I'll see what turns up on the market, but at the moment, no intention to move away.
Yeah, that's great. The only thing is the only thing I still resent is how petrol and diesel drivers, for some reason, pick on you as if you've done something horrible by buying an EV. And even my brother phoned me the other day and said, "Oh, I hear a Tesla went on fire." I went, "I think Volvo or a Citroen or something's gone on fire somewhere else in the world." But never mind.
We'll talk about that.
Oh, it just gets. Anyway, you ripped my knitting. I'm coming over to right gumpy old.
Yeah, quite against type, I might say.
I better get my green hat on. This is for Bucky.
Yeah.
This is for...
The Grinch.
So let's wind up there, guys. A huge thank you again to Jennifer and John for those insights there. Stuart has been working feverishly in the background, and a big round of applause for him. There will be an audio version of podcasts starting with the November 2023 episode. You can find them on all good podcast providers from 2024 onwards, maybe a little sooner if he has a bit of good fortune. Just search for MG EV Community Podcast and we'll be there. That's it for the last MG EV podcast of the year. Also in the background, we've got a huge vote of thanks for the volunteers who moderate the forums and keep it running smoothly and safely. So Alb, a real human, Coulomb and Rolf, thank you very much. You don't get enough praise for what you do. And as ever, I mentioned him a few times, a huge thanks to Stuart, from Stuart to the podcasters who give up their evenings. We love it. But a huge thank you to Stuart, who works feverishly in the background, making all this come together. So a huge thank you to Jennifer. Please, this isn't farewell. Please don't make it farewell. Great having you on tonight. Same to you,
Thank you for having
John.
me. It's great. Thank you.
Super. Same to you, John. Please, yeah, we'll miss your stats. We'll miss your completely different outlook on how things are over there. So please don't become a stranger.
It's been a pleasure, and happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year to everybody. God jul, as we say, and ho ho ho, as we say here in Norway. Yeah, take care, everybody.
Thank you for that. We'll find out how they say good Merry Christmas in Devon. Tom, what do they say down there then?
Merry Christmas. That's what we say. Yeah. No snow usually, but we can
Still
pretend.
there? That's good. And good to have you on board again, and we'll see you in 2024. I'm back. Vince, thanks for joining us again tonight.
No problem at all.
Good seeing you. And again, Miles, we couldn't have done it without you.
Thank you. I mean, I'm looking forward to what MG is going to bring for us in 2024. We've got a few new models teased, including perhaps a new version of Marvel R coming to right-hand drive markets. So there's a couple of other SAIC brands. If anyone wants to Google the Rising Auto F7 or the Rising Auto R7, there's a couple of SAIC electric vehicles in China which may end up with an MG badge in the next 12 months or so.
Right. Santa's list is filling up now. So thanks for that, Miles. If you're watching live, thank you for joining us, and please click the like button and join in the next join in the chat windows. I haven't had much a chance to look at the chat tonight, but it's just been so busy. If you're watching later, thank you for choosing to watch this video, and please subscribe and get that notification for the next time we go live. Thanks, everybody. Just leaves me now to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all MG EV owners throughout the world, and catch up with you early in 2024. Thanks, and Bunny Yule, or whatever it was.
God jul.
Bunny Yule.
Merry Christmas.
Och gott nytt år.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.